Hello, and welcome to another Changing Conversation on SGS Live. I'm PJ Kwong, and today we're diving into a critical and complex topic that touches us all, food safety. I want to take a moment to talk about World Food Safety Day, which happens this year on June 7th. This year, the theme is Science in Action, and it's a good thing because of the 200 diseases caused by unsafe food, ranging from diarrhea to cancers. Then there's the 1.6 million people who get sick due to unsafe food every day. And on average, 110 billion US dollars. That is the annual economic burden of foodborne diseases in low and middle income countries. In this session, we're going to explore how the evolving landscape of food safety, focusing on how companies can go beyond compliance and GFSI-recognized schemes like FSSC 22000 to cultivate a proactive food safety culture and reduce non-conformities through systems thinking and continuous improvement. As always, we have the best experts to help us break it all down. Necat Kirkil, FSSC Representative, Türkiye and the Middle East. Welcome, Necat.
Thank you, PJ. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here and celebrate World Safety Day together, but at the same time to discuss how to improve it and make it better all together every moment.
Amazing. We have another guest, and that is Sheik Peer, Technical Manager, Food, SGS. Welcome, Peer.
Thank you for having me, and good day, everyone.
So nice to have you here. Okay, this is for both of you. I'm wondering how your experience feeds into this topic of food safety. Necat, you start.
Thank you, PJ. As some of you may know that I'm Necat Kirkil, Foundation FSSC, Turkey, Middle East, Central Asia, and some Eastern countries representative. I've been serving in this role around 2 years, and I finished molecular biology and genetics, bachelor and then master degree in food technology and quality assurance. I worked around 7 years in food laboratory as supervisor and did some 5 years management system auditors, including FSSC 20000. And what I currently do is support our certified organization, certification body, all partners in the region, and provide communication. And whenever they have challenges, questions, they can always contact me. Thank you.
Peer, what about you? What about your experience?
So it's a pleasure to be part of this insightful and important session. I'm Sheik Peer, Technical Manager and a Senior Food Auditor and a Trainer for Food Safety Management System with SGS Gulf Limited, Dubai. I have been in the field of food safety more than 25 years, and last 15 years, I'm with SGS Gulf Limited, Dubai. I have done more than 2,500 audits, includes GFSI scheme, FSSC and BRCGS for food, BRCGS for storage and distribution, ISO 22000, HACCP, many more. And I have conducted and I have delivered more than 50 lead auditor training course like ISO 22000 and FSSC V6 like lead auditor training courses. Through every audit and training, I had opportunity to learn more about the challenges and the risk companies face in the food safety. I feel privileged to use my experience to help them improve in the food safety system, like identifying the gap and assessing the risk and evaluating the system against any criteria like FSSC scheme, and also continually improve the food safety management system, and thus supporting them to develop and promote the strong food safety culture. Thank you.
You know what? As I say to my audiences all the time, we have the best experts, and we're going to have so much interesting conversation throughout the session. But just before we get started, I would like to see a show of virtual hands from our audience today. I'm wondering if the companies represented in our audience are certified to any GFSI standard. A quick yes or no in the chat window below to let us know would be absolutely great. So any companies, if they're in fact certified to any GFSI standard, we'd like to know, just kind of for fun. So yes or no in the chat window, and we're going to continue on. Necat, can you start things off with this question? What are the most common food safety challenges businesses face today?
Thank you, PJ. First of all, thank you for your kind words, and thank you also for your starting with such an easy question, relatively easy, because everybody probably has an answer for this question, but at the same time, it is really a hard question and really complex, very complicated. Everyone has a different probably view for these questions, and it is really, really hard to answer this question without overlooking many other challenges. I am sure many of our audiences will agree that the increasing complexity of food supply chain, because probably around 100 years ago, we would go get our food from our neighbor, from our farms. We would just got from our in town, and just basically from the same center. Just it was the we get all the food from around us. But now, as you may all know, probably when we go to supermarket, we get the chocolate. It's just coming from China. It's just coming from, say, Ivory Coast, from South Africa. So supply chain is getting more and more complicated, and consumer expectations are changing. The other day I was walking around in a supermarket. I love it really, walking, and that I see some label just with a clean label, just there written on a big font, and that's just 5 ingredients. So just consumer expectation changing, and also like employee engagement also is like a big challenge. The other one is just financial concerns coming before food safety concerns. It is really big challenge in Middle East. And one of the other challenges is quality departments, their responsibility, because everybody, all the manufacturer probably thinks, oh, it's just everything is quality manufacturing. But however, I think this is not the main issues in Middle East, because I'm a Middle East and Turkey representative. I think the biggest problem is a bit lack of transparency, a bit of capacity building. So this is what I would say. And as you mentioned, that Science in Action is this year's food safety team by World Health Organization, and many organizations expect should have some scientific knowledge, data, and guidance complying with the legal framework or international, I would say, schemes like FSSC 2000. But also we need to tailor this practice in our organizations and local context. Like a meat manufacturer as a plan shouldn't be like just the same as a catering company or a hotel catering or any other. So each organization should have their own tailored HACCP plans, and in where they are based on their scopes. So what I want to just go, actually what I want to say is, in Middle East, we have like different, we have to take into account local regulation, cultural habits, behavior of people, geographical characteristics, and regional challenges while making our HACCP plans, while taking priority on our risk. So this should be one of the problem. But when we look at our HACCP plans, all of them are based on Western countries, or USA, or Canada, or European EU. So what we need to do in Middle East, in Africa, in Asia, we need to build some capacity and to be transparent. We'll share our knowledge with each other, and more collaboration between private and, I guess, government authorities.
You know what? I want to just point people's attention to the right, because we were just asking about GFSI standards, and if people were, if their companies were certified to any of those standards. And we're starting to see responses come in, and we've got lots of yeses. So that means we've got a very knowledgeable audience. And also, when we take a look at the no's, that means that we've got companies represented that would like to learn. So I'm going to turn my attention to my next question. And Peer, this is for you. How are the standards evolving in response to global supply chain pressures and new risks? For example, climate, cross-border, recalls, etc.
That's a very good question. And global supply chains are becoming increasingly complex and emerging new risk like climate change and product recall and also the cross-border trade challenges. So those are pushing the standards to evolve rapidly. The standards are now becoming like a more like a risk based and proactive, not just focus on compliance like FSSC and even the BRC. So all those standards are mainly focused on like the risk based approach on the supply chain, the entire supply chain. Greater emphasis on the risk assessment and the traceability and crisis management, requiring companies to manage the food safety across the entire supply chain, not just within the operation. So which will like you can say that the focus should be on the entire supply chain, not only within the operation. Climate change is leading to the multiple risk. Like example, you can say that the shortage of the availability of the raw material, or sometimes you can say like the contamination at the time of harvesting, or maybe storage or transportation, etc. So these all like put the organization in the situation like a emergency. Even the standards FSSC 22000, there is a specific clause referring for the like emergency procurement. There is a clause like a 2.5.1. It's clearly stated that there must be a procedure to handle the emergency situation. Emergency situation can arise in any situation, maybe like the climate change, like flooding or war, or maybe any kind of like a natural calamity, etc. But the organization, it's a responsibility of the organization. They should ensure that whatever situation or whatever emergency or whatever things, it should not impact on the entire supply chain. And finally, they already committed to provide the safe and quality product to customer, and they already committed to ensure the availability of the product like a kind of like a business like a business continuity. So all the customers are always like trusted on the brand and the reputation, and they always focus on the real like a reliable product on the market. So I can say that it's not the standards are moving now from the reactive to the preventive. And also you can say that the example of like a climate change, or maybe any kind of the emergency situation, the organization must identify any kind of like the standby supplier, or maybe they can have a like a buffer stock to handle the emergency situation. It depends upon the organization based on the production forecast. They can ensure that how much they can stock the material to handle the emergency. And also any recall. There are that number of recall is increasing because of like a presence of pathogen or presence of any chemical contamination or etc. So rather than taking action just to reject the material, or maybe just to focus on the material which is not fit for the use. So the organization, definitely the standard expectation is they are saying that the GFSI requirements are expecting that the organization assess the supplier and assess the raw material by considering all the potential hazard impact on the entire supply chain. And also they can categorize whether the suppliers are falling under the high risk supplier or low risk supplier or medium supplier. Based on the risk, they can apply the mitigation measure, like conducting on-site audit, or maybe the regular like a regular review of the each consignment, or maybe the regular testing, and also like rely on any GFSI certification program, etc. So when it is like a recall, definitely the recall situation is put the supply chain to go in deep, like to identify the exact cause, like that the situation is put that the entire supply chain should be assessed thoroughly, and they must ensure that the reliable and the reputable sources are in place.
Excellent. Necat, I've got a question for you, and that is for you to please help me and our audience understand the core principles of FSSC and how it aligns with GFSI.
Thank you, PJ, for the question. And based on your question to audience, as I can see, many of our actual audiences saying yes, they are probably certified according to GFSI schemes, and I hope most of them are FSSC 2000, and they already know what I'm talking about, but most of them may not aware of FSSC 2000. And also, I think it links quite well to what we are just discussing, what just Peer said, because what we actually need for food safety is a strong framework that allows for both global recognition and local implementation. This is why exactly FSSC 22000 comes in. To summarize, FSSC 20000 as a GFSI recognized certification schemes, and we are currently have around 38,000 certified organizations, and we are the largest GFSI scheme in the world. But always, quality comes before quantity for us. What makes FSSC 22000 unique is based on, from its name, you can get 22000. It's based on ISO 22000. So ISO 22000 is the foundation for FSSC 20000. But also, apart from ISO 22000, it's combined with technical specification called PRPs, a prerequisite program such as like 22001 for food manufacturing and other relevant PRPs. Apart from that, there are some other additional requirements such as food defense, food fraud, quality control, equipment management, so allergen management. So this is also additional requirements. It's FSSC 22000 is a very comprehensive, very detailed system, but also flexible enough to be applied across the entire food supply chain from farm to fork, because there are like really big companies, but also there are small, medium enterprises. What is the beautiful thing about FSSC 20000? It's very flexible and it's totally risk-based. You can just change it based on your scope, based on the how big, how large your actually company organization is. You can just change it. And FSSC 22000 is not just a checklist and one size to fit all. So it's a very structured system that organization must adapt to their own operations and risk geography, as I said, like in the Middle East. So in terms of GFSI, FSSC 20000, as I said, is one of the recognized GFSI schemes in the world. And it helps companies to demonstrate they're managing the food safety risk effectively in line with globally, but at the same time, thus taking risk locally. And what GFSI does, they have like a benchmarking document. So all that schemes like BRCGS, FSSC, IFS, SQF, they have to just that comply with the that GFSI benchmarking scheme. So we are one of them, and we are the largest of them. And so that, because currently, unfortunately, ISO 20000 is not that enough, because it's not GFSI recognized. So many of our organizations just doing a transition from ISO 22000 to FSSC 20000, because we also have now integrated program. Integrated program, while there's certification bodies, company like SGS coming and auditing you on your side, we also non-stoply monitoring the performance of certifications bodies like SGS, because we want to make sure that every certificate that we awarded to you is really deserved. So this is what we do.
So much, really. What you do is so much. You know, we're starting to get the picture here. Peer, I've got a question for you. In this context, what is risk-based thinking, and why do it and documentation matter?
Yeah, so risk-based thinking is a proactive approach, to identifying, assessing, and managing the potential risk that could impact on the entire supply chain. Instead of reacting to problem after they happen, the risk-based thinking encourages the organization to anticipate the risk and take the step to prevent or mitigate those risks. So this is always like the risk-based thinking, you can say like is a proactive management system. When you say like a risk-based thinking, of course, so the organization should ensure that the entire operation and each and every process step, they should identify the hazard, like a potential hazard could like a impact in the particular step, and that hazard can be like a assess like the kind of like a risk assessment, like a likelihood and severity, by choosing any suitable methodology, and they can apply the or they can say that implement the effective mitigation measure to eliminate or prevent those hazards. Then continually monitor how those system implemented, like all those hazards are implemented, and it is well managed, it is meeting the requirement, and there is no any risk of there is any risk to the like a consumer or maybe the in the end user. And finally, they can continually improve the system, like by review at a regular interval, or conducting internal audit, or gathering the data. That the data is like always like the current monitoring data, so they can identify the gap and where they can improve further, and to eliminate the like further non-conformities in like a future like a system. So the to identifying the hazard, because when you say like risk-based thinking is a proactive management system, when you say like a proactive management system, of course the aim is like that you have to show that reduction of customer complaint and reduction of non-conformities, and all the risk is identified and managed well. The entire system is in place and it is well controlled, and there is no any risk to the end user. So that is the overall idea of like the proactive management system. The next question you asked that about the importance of the documentation, of course, because documentation, you can say that it's evidence of practices. That every organization, that there is a policy and there is a procedure, and the policy and procedure, whether the policy and procedures are adopted and implemented and followed, and it is ensure that all those controls are managed, it is called like a practices. So the evidence of practice is documentation. Of course, documentation is most important to ensure the compliance. Okay, example, documentation shows all the risk identified, and all the risk assessment were already conducted, and the mitigation measures are in place. So which is more important for the audit, like a complaints audit, and also to ensure the compliance of legislation requirement or maybe the customer requirement. So the second one, you can say that consistency. The first one is the document, very important to show the complaints. Second one is the consistency. When you say like procedures and the records, the procedures and records are effectively followed by everyone to manage the risk. It means the same protocol and the same step and the same the criteria or the same requirement is adopted by everyone, and everyone follow the same thing to prove that the document, like a consistency in the document. Okay, all the documents are maintained according to the frequency and according to the procedure and policy. And the third one, you can say that of course document is very important for the traceability. Like we discussed in the previous session, like when there is a issue like incidents or maybe non-compliance or maybe any kind of like a food safety concern, of course the organization, they must have the effective traceability system. Even all the GFSI standards are very much focused on the traceability until the source. Even the source, I mean that sometimes the source can be like agriculture farm, or maybe the trader or manufacturer, but the GFSI expectation is that you have to go until the maximum level where you can gather the information to ensure the reliability of the sources. Okay, traceability, the records. Okay, all the records are maintained, and definitely it is very important to trace back until the source. How fast, how quick you can gather the information to reflect or maybe to respond to the complaints or non-conformities. So automatically the documentation is very important for the traceability purpose. Then you can say that a continual improvement. Of course, every organization, when you maintain the documents like as per your procedure or as per your criteria, maybe it is a legislation requirement, or maybe it is a customer requirement, or it is a standard requirement, FSSC requirement. All the documents are maintained as per the frequency, as per the criteria. But later on, this also requirement performance monitoring. So once in a year or at a regular interval, all the data to be gathered, the reliable data, you can do the trend assessment. So based on the trend, you can get idea that where you are and which area really the top management should focus, or where you would like to improve further your system. Really, that the documents are like very, very important in the food safety management system. And moreover, documents should be realistic. It should be maintained as it is, not like anything like a advanced entry or maybe later entry. So all the employee, definitely they should understand the importance of the document, and it is one of the responsibility of the senior management commitment.
Of course. I mean, there is so much going on here that's great, vital information. Necat, you look like you want to jump into something.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, and great insights. Thank you, Pierre, for those. I just wanted to add one small addition. Also, local authorities, legal authorities, non-stop monitors those food business operator. So when there's a problem, like a consumer find, let's say, hope it's not, but when they find like a glass in their products, in their what they bought something from in supermarket, they probably gonna do a complaint. They're gonna do it legal issues. So this is exactly where you need those documentation. This is where you can show that your records, you did all your checks for glass procedures, that your records, you were checking all of them. So due diligence rule, you really need to show non-stoply and write your records to just check them. And this is all your evidence that you can, you're showing that you're taking all measures, whatever you're doing.
There is, as I said, so much going on. And I want to take a quick look at our audience to see who has joined us today, because we have a global audience typically. Hi back to everybody, and a big thank you for joining us as we talk about food safety with my expert guests. I'm talking about Necat Kirkil from FSSC, and of course, Sheik Peer, Technical Food Manager for SGS. Thank you again, one and all. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of this interview section. Make sure you drop in your question in the chat window below. Before we continue, though, I've got another question for our audience. What is the biggest food safety challenge in your organization today? Please drop it in the chat window below, as I said, and I'll check back in the answers in a little bit. So what is the biggest food safety challenge in your organization today? Just let us know in the chat window. And as I said, we'll take a look at the answers a little bit later. We're going to get back to our conversation now. Peer, this question is for you. What does a proactive food safety system look like?
Okay, thank you for another question. Yeah, proactive management system. So, yeah, truly proactive management system is one that does not just aim for the conformance. Okay, so it is aim for the prevention, performance, promotion, and continual improvement. Okay. So the previous session, we already discussed that when you ask the question about risk-based thinking, I mentioned about the proactive management system. So now the same similar type of the requirement. When you ask about the proactive management system, I have to say the proactive management system is like a risk-based thinking. Okay. So first you can say that any proactive management system, you can say that the first point is the risk-based thinking. Even FSSC strongly recommend that there are two risk assessment: organizational risk assessment and operational risk assessment. In many areas, most of the GFSI standards are specifically mentioned that based on the risk. The word you can see in most of the standards based on the risk. The standards are not expecting the control measure just to put as a control measure. You have to identify the risk, likely identify the hazard. Okay, what are the potential risk of hazard entering into the particular step, and you can assess like a likelihood and severity, and you can prevent those hazard enter into food chain, the entire supply chain or entire food chain. So that is the first thing. You can say that proactive. Instead of waiting for a problem to happen, the system identify and control the risk ahead of time using the tool like hazard analysis, risk assessment, and the data, like predictive data. So these are the things like when you say about like a proactive management system. Second, okay, proactive management system, the first is like a risk-based thinking. The second, the most important thing is, okay, it is built on like a strong food safety culture. Okay, all the when you say like a proactive management system, by default it is a focus on like a the food safety culture practices. It's everyone responsibility, everyone from the top management, or you can say like a senior management to the shop floor employee, understand their role and importance in protecting the risk towards the food safety. And people are encouraged to report the concern or deviation during their the daily operation. And also whenever the employees are that there is a mistake, the mistake is identified, the mistake to be treated as opportunity for improvement, like take as a treating as the good opportunity rather than that consider as a like a blame or etc. So the strong beliefness is it should be there is a clear commitment from everyone from the top management to the frontline employee, and everybody is responsible and accountable for the food safety. And there is a clear like people are encouraged to report the concern, etc. Then the proactive management system always focus on the data, whatever data gathered, the data to be always that assess, and whatever data you mean that the monitored data or verified data to be assessed for the further improvement to avoid any non-conformity in near future, any deviation. Okay, then integration. When we implement the food safety system, the system should not be that alone, or the system should not be isolated. It is a responsibility of the organization, the senior management or top management. They should ensure that the system is embedded with the overall organization system. What I mean that overall organization system means it should be aligned with quality, food safety, health and safety, environment, etc. So that is a way that the organization respond that like how the proactive management system in place. Most of the GFSI standards like FSSC, there is a specific requirement about the environment, there is a specific requirement about the quality of the product, there is a specific requirement about the safety of the product, and also incident management and a contingency plan, etc. So
amazing.
By default, so by default, like integration of the management system, risk-based thinking, and performance analyzing the data for the continual improvement, build a strong food safety culture. So these all like a part of the proactive management system.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say to Necat, I wanted him to do a bit of a follow-up question, and that was how can companies shift from firefighting to foresight?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, it might be a bit repeating of what Pierre said, but because probably many of food professionals have find these questions on their mind, because many of us just in the food sector have that firefighting mode at some point. It's like it probably is just happening when reacting to a recall or a customer complaint or a non-conformity during an audit. So how can we do that shift from firefighting to a foresight? I think probably what just exactly Pierre said, just it's all about being proactive. That starts with the understanding your risk, your data, and your people. It just ties back to what we discussed just right now. And also science in action. You cannot be proactive if you don't have the right data. As I like just said, if your HACCP plan is just a document you created once and you just don't care anymore, you just totally forget about your HACCP plan, and or if your food safety culture is only active when just a week before and there is an audit or just some legal authorities visiting you, really this is not a very good nature or positive food safety culture. So what you should do always and always, this is what FSSC 20,000 requirements are also. Use your trend analysis from their own non-conformities, CCP deviations, or consumer complaints, even like the minor ones, near misses, even there is like a big major non-conformity. You should still just use this trend analysis, because it might give some signals to you what might happen in future. This is the right way to predict and prevent issues for future. Also involve your frontline employees, because they are often see risk before the managers do. And there always should be an internal reporting system that just don't collect the data, but also turns into an insight. And one last thing, as just Pierre said, leadership really plays a crucial role in all this issue that we talk about. Because like a company can only move from firefighting to foresight when its leadership stop asking, oh, did we actually pass the audit? This shouldn't be the question. The right question is, are we managing our risk in the right way? Are we managing our risk every day? So this is when actually senior management asks this question. Probably there is mature and positive culture in that organization, I can say.
So, Necat, I'm going to stay with you. Sort of a similar kind of question, but a little bit different. What makes food safety culture more than a slogan?
Well, okay. This is a good question. Yeah, it is, food safety culture totally is much more than a slogan or a poster on a wall, because when you just visit a food business operator, manufacturing, you can see lots of posters everywhere. And it is probably happening most of the places. It's just a requirement they need to comply, but it shouldn't be like that. What makes this more than a slogan is all about, I think, starts with leadership and about everyone in the organization understanding their role and feeling empowered to act. Usually we're talking about the food safety issues, we're talking about the food safety requirements, FSSC, but also one of the things people usually missing as that really people really feel them they are belong to this company, to their what they really believe, what they do. Like if they are really working in poor conditions and worried about even their job security, food safety will never be their top priority. Let's be honest. And we also have like a scheme, FSSC 24,000 social sustainability. This is where it exactly comes in, but I will not go deep into FSSC 20,000. But what I'm trying to say is just there isn't one single component of food safety culture that makes food safety culture is a positive more than like a slogan. You just need to take all the risk about, you need to communicate from top to bottom, from bottom to top, and you need to get feedback from all your employees. You need to just take account all the risk that about people. And one of the things also just a non-stop and a continuous training, clear communication, both internal, also your stakeholders externally. and make food safety rewarding and not punitive. Because like if you make it like punitive, or someone just, let's say, notify you about a food safety issue, if you just punish them about them, they will not do it again, and next time probably they're going to be a recall and going to cost you a lot of money. And one of the questions during our webinars, during our speeches, always people ask that how we can convince the senior management to actually invest in food safety and culture. First of all, their motivator always should be food safety. It's really easy and it's simple. If you don't provide food safety put in the place, people gonna die because of your product, because of your services. This should be your first motivator. But usually, unfortunately, this is not the case. Then what you can do, you just tell people, your senior management, your top management, you should just tell them, if we just don't do the food safety, we're gonna lose money. Because top management usually also concerns about financial. We about financial concerns. It's normal, because but this is one of the way that you can just convince them. The recalls costing billions of dollars that every year to companies. So this is one of the way you can do it. And how they can measure it, they do surveys to measure it, but it is also meaningless when they just measure it and they don't care about what they got from those surveys. As long as they don't use data, it's still just going to stay as a slogan. So this is okay. As I can say, I guess we don't have much time. Stop here.
No, it's perfect, Necat. I love your answer. And it's just like we talked about off the top. This is a topic that touches everybody. I mean, honestly. And when you think about the cost in real dollars to all kinds of countries, when you think about the cost in lives, I mean, it is an extremely important topic. So this is going to be my final question before our Q&A. And I want to remind our audience that if you would like to put a question into this Q&A, please make sure that you drop it into our chat window below. So with your experience, Peer, and keeping in mind that you're right, we don't have a lot of time left and we do want to get to some of those questions, can you please give me some quick highlights about the roles of leadership, training, and employee engagement in this area, and if they're important? So the briefest answer you can give me.
Thank you for your question. Okay. Yes, of course. When we are talking about the strong food safety culture, and leadership and training and employee engagements are essential. By default, this is like the GFSI guidance requirement. Okay. The strong food safety culture, leadership. Okay. So leadership set the tone, and the top management make the food safety like a visible priority. Okay, the top management make the food safety visible priority. Okay, then everyone in the organization, they should follow, they should adopt. Okay, and it is a responsibility of the top management. They should ensure the required resources for the strong food safety culture. The resources can be anything. Like it can be like the training or manpower or material or the commitment, etc. Then the top management is always like lead by example, and they should provide the responsibility and accountability for the key personnel to implement and manage the strong food safety culture system. And the top management is always like that encouraging the people, supporting the people, or promoting the people. Always it should be available all the time. And you can say that always they can say that that establishing the objective, vision and mission, and the policy, procedures, and effective communication, about the customer requirement, or maybe the like a legislation requirement and the company requirement. So these all the things, like it's a part of the leadership commitment. When you talk about the training, of course, because a training, we can say that always like a training and education is always like a backbone. Okay, so the food safety risk can be avoided or eliminated by educating the staff or educating the team who is involving in the entire operation, from the top management to shop floor employee. But training, there are so many trainings to be provided. Like in some country, there is a legislation requirement. You have to provide some set of training. And example, like a basic food hygiene training is mandatory for all the food handler, or maybe in charge level, like a person in charge training, or maybe the food safety team minimum has a level 3 or level 4 training, etc. But every organization, they are providing the training to fulfill the legislation requirement, and the same time fulfill the standard requirement like a FSSC. When we go through the FSSC the standards, there are many places it's highlighted that by trained people, like a trained personnel or competent personnel. So these all like a mean that there is a training requirement. Example like the training on allergen, etc. The similar way, like other GFSI standards like a BRC is specifically mentioned that what are the training requirements. So the organization is deliver the training to fulfill the standards requirement. And also the company own procedure and policy, there is a set of training like induction training, or before joining there is a hygiene training, etc. Whatever. But to ensure that a strong food safety culture in place, it's a leadership commitment responsibility. They should ensure that the training is provided based on the job need, customized and tailored, and it is delivered to the right person, and it is delivered by the right person and delivered to the right person. And also after the trainings are delivered in their own language, and specific tools are used for the training, like rather than discussion whether the suitable tools are used, then whether the people understood the requirement or not. So when you say like a strong food safety culture, after the training, after the communication, the employee should understand that yes, I understood my job role, I understood my role and responsibility, I understood my hygiene requirement, this is my responsibility, my accountability, I have to follow, I have to put it on the floor. My finally I learned something, I learned something, and that I have to make a practice. So this is one of the
Amazing. You know what? I've got to stop you there because we've got to get into our Q&A. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this changing conversation on SGS Live. We are talking about food safety with my expert guests from FSSC, Necat Kirkil and Sheik Peer from SGS. Okay, we're going to get into our Q&A right now. First question that I have for you is from the audience. Is the choice of food products from a particular region over another related to food security or culture? Necat, do you want to take that?
Okay, I'm trying to understand the question.
I think that if I can sort of jump in, what I think that they're talking about is food safety. Are there different parameters that really relate to food security or culture? You know, in every country in the world, people have different ideas about what keeps food safe. So,
first of all, food security is totally, it depends on the country, depends on the region. Food security is totally different terms than food safety. Food security is people's just ability to access to nutritional food. So this is totally different, and it is for sure, it's not the same as somewhere in Africa, somewhere in USA. So it's totally different. But if we're talking about the risk of food products or services, it also changes. As I said, one of the challenge and the biggest challenge I see is capacity building in Middle East. This is one of the problems, because problems we face are totally different in the Western countries. The climate is totally hot. People's habits are totally different. So we need to understand people, how they behave when. So food safety culture is what people do when nobody is watching. But are those people are doing on a site, are they different from somewhere else? Yeah, it's just totally different. The people's where they are from is really just shows how they behave in terms of they face a food safety issue. So it's also when we go to a bit more specifically on HACCP plans also change. You need to take account to your region. You need to take about your transportation. You need to take about your local legal requirements. So yes, it's totally depends on where you're producing, also your site, your people. Everything does depends on where you are indeed.
Amazing. Okay, you know what? This has been a very fast, almost an hour. We've been talking about food safety. And before I wrap up, I would really love it if each of you would give me one final thought. Peer, do you want to go first? Something to share with our audience that they can take away from this session.
Yes, of course. I will say that risk-based thinking in entire operation. Okay, each and every process step, they have to identify the risk and assess the risk and apply the mitigation measure. And the second one is the strong food safety culture. It means the food safety system to be implemented and managed by creating a culture.
Amazing. Necat, your turn.
I can say that food safety culture is not a destination you can arrive and just stop there. It's just a continuous journey. It's all about it's more than just compliance. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued, empowered.
You know what? I have to tell you, gentlemen, I have learned a lot in this session, and it has been an absolute pleasure to have you join us here. I'm, of course, talking about my expert guests, Necat Kirkil, the representative for FSSC, and the technical manager food for SGS, Sheik Peer. We've been talking about food safety and what companies should know and do. We're so glad that you were here to be part of this fascinating and informative session. And if you want more information, leave a comment or question in the chat and someone will get back to you. I'm PJ Kwong. I want to thank you for watching, and bye for now.